My name is Claire Clatterbuck. I'm 30 years old. On October 19th at my engagement party, my mother sees the microphone right in the middle of the toasts. In front of 86 guests, she smiled sweetly and announced, Claire dropped out of medical school because she couldn't handle the pressure, and honestly, she couldn't even keep her first marriage together. A nervous chuckle rippled through the room. The room. My father began to stand, ready to deliver his usual polished lie about my fragile constitution. But my fiancé, Evan, rose slowly to his feet. He looked my mother directly in the eyes, his voice calm yet sharp as a blade. Mrs. Clatterbuck, before you continue, would you like to tell everyone why you really pulled Claire out of medical school, or should I do it for you? My mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The entire room fell deathly silent. They thought they knew my story. They were wrong. Before we dive deeper into what truly happened that night and the secret my parents had been hiding for years, if you've ever been publicly shamed or misunderstood by your own family, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if the story truly resonates with you. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're listening from. I grew up in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, zip code 19,010. If you know the main line, you know exactly what that means. Old money neighborhoods, tree-lined streets, and country club memberships passed down like family heirlooms. My parents held their membership at the Marion Cricket Club, the kind of place where you didn't just play tennis, you performed respectability. In our world, what people thought of you wasn't secondary to who you were. It was who you were. My mother, Diane, was a hospital administrator. Smart, polished, and terrifyingly efficient. She could walk into any room and read the power dynamics in 30 seconds. She earned around $180,000 a year, yet you'd never know it from how meticulously she managed appearances. Every dinner party we hosted, and there were many, usually 12 to 16 guests, was choreographed like a performance. The right wine, the right conversation topics, the perfect balance of self-deprecation and subtle boasting. My father, Lawrence, served as vice president of financial operations at a regional pharmaceutical company called Penridge Therapeutics. Their offices were in Conshohocken, about 20 minutes away. He had the kind of job that sounded impressive at cocktail parties. He wore expensive suits and spoke effortlessly about market positioning and strategic growth initiatives. Looking back, I realize he was always performing too. We all were. I attended private school, $32,000 a year in tuition. I did well enough to get into a strong college and maintain the family narrative. That narrative was simple. The Clatterbucks were successful, stable, and respectable. We had struggles, of course, but we handled them with grace. We didn't air our problems. We solved them quietly and moved on. When I was accepted to the University of Pennsylvania's Perelman School of Medicine in April 2017, one of only 150 students chosen that year, my mother cried, not purely from joy, but from relief. She had spent 22 years investing in this moment. Her daughter, the future doctor. It was the ultimate social proof. I remember her at the acceptance celebration dinner. She stood with her wine glass and said, "To Claire, who worked so hard and never gave up." She looked around at our family friends and I saw it, that flash of triumph as if she had won something. She had no idea how quickly she would cash it in. Medical school was hard. Everyone says that, but until you're living it, you don't truly understand. Moan, the first year felt like drinking from a fire hose. Anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, all at once. I studied in the biomedical library until they closed at midnight. I had a study group of 5 meeting every Tuesday and Thursday. We quizzed each other on muscle origins and insertions until the words blurred together. My anatomy lab partner was Sophie Brennan, sharp, funny from New Jersey. We'd stand over our cadaver, a 73-year-old man who had donated his body to science, carefully searching for the recurrent laryngeal nerve without damaging it. Those hours in the lab felt strangely peaceful. Just us and the work. No performance required. I commuted from Bryn Mawr to PenMed's campus in West Philadelphia. 35 minutes on the SEPTA Regional Rail if I caught the express. I usually reviewed notes or articles on the train. The rhythm felt right, purposeful. My MOAN GPA was 3.76, placing me in the top 25% of the class. Not the absolute top, but solid and strong. I wasn't drowning. I was thriving. When I began M2 in August 2018, I felt confident. Second year was supposed to be tougher, with more clinical exposure and integration of knowledge, but I was ready. My parents loved telling people I was at Penn Med. At dinner parties, my mother would casually mention, "Oh, Claire's in her second year at Penn, doing very well." The pride in her voice was unmistakable. What she didn't mention was that by late November, something had shifted at home. My father began coming home early, 3 days in a row during the first week of December. In our family, you didn't leave work early. You stayed until the job was done and your commitment was proven. Early departures signaled weakness or, worse, trouble. I asked him about it once. "Is everything okay at work, Dad?" He smiled and replied, "Just some year-end reorganization. Nothing to worry about." But I noticed how quickly and casually he said it. On December 18th, my mother canceled our annual holiday open house. We always held it. 45 to 50 guests catered hors d'oeuvres, the house decorated like a magazine spread. She sent the cancellation email a week before with the subject line, "E-postponing this year's gathering." The reason given, "Your father isn't feeling well." That wasn't like her. Diane Clatterbuck didn't cancel social obligations for minor illnesses. She showed up to events with migraines, stomach bugs, whatever was happening beneath the surface. Appearances always mattered more than comfort. Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment the cracks appeared. December 2018, my father came home early 3 days in a row, and my mother, it was 7:30 at night. I had just returned from campus, exhausted after a practical exam on cardiovascular pathology. I was planning to make tea and review notes before bed. "Claire, sit down," she said. Her voice carried that surgical precision she used when delivering bad news to hospital staff. I sat. Financial documents, not medical charts, were spread across the mahogany table, all bearing my father's company letterhead. "Your father's company is going through a restructuring," she said. "He's been placed on administrative leave while they investigate some irregularities." Irregularities? Irregularities? I asked. "A financial discrepancies, internal audit, it's complicated." She folded her hands. "The point is, we're facing a temporary financial emergency. We need you home." My stomach dropped. "What kind of emergency?" "The kind where we must be strategic with our resources." She slid a paper toward me. It was a form from Penn's Student Affairs Office, voluntary medical leave. "You want me to take a leave from medical school? Just for 1 semester, maybe 2, until things stabilize. You'll come back," she said firmly. "ENS is temporary, but right now we need you to help the family through this difficult period." I looked at my father, who stood silently by the doorway. "Dad?" "Nor mother's right," he said quietly. "You need to make some adjustments." To build something cold settle in my chest. "What about tuition?" "I've already paid for spring semester. We have $127,000 left in your education fund, your 529 account." My mother replied, "Aid? We'll need to redirect it temporarily for legal expenses, just until your father's situation is resolved." Legal expenses? Corporate lawyers aren't cheap, Claire. I stared at both of them. This was insane. I was doing well at Penn. I had a clear path and a future, and they wanted me to stop. "How long?" I asked. "E-semester maybe 2. We'll reassess as we go." "Can I defer instead?" A deferral has different requirements. Medical leave is cleaner. She pushed the form closer. "I've already spoken with the Associate Dean's office. They're expecting your request." Something about that sentence stopped me cold. She had already spoken to them before talking to me. But she was my mother. She had raised me. She knew me better than anyone. If she said this was necessary, if she said it was temporary, I trusted her. That was my first mistake. I signed the form on January 15, 2019. The stated reason, family health emergency requiring caregiver presence. That's what I believed I was doing. Being a caregiver, helping my family through a crisis. I didn't read the form carefully enough. I didn't ask what my mother had written in her email to Penn. I simply trusted her. I started working on January 28th as a clinical research coordinator at a biotechnology company in King of Prussia, $52,000 a year. It wasn't medical school, but it was healthcare adjacent. I told myself it was temporary. A detour, not a dead end. My mother withdrew the education fund on February 14th, Valentine's Day. $127,000 transferred to something called the Clatterbuck Family Trust for legal expenses. I didn't see that detail until years later. My father settled his situation with Penridge Therapeutics in September 2019. He told people it was an early retirement, clean, dignified, final. But what we didn't tell them was that he had to repay $865,000 over 36 months. $250,000 immediately liquidated from his 401k, our family investment portfolio, and a home equity line of credit. The remaining $615,000 came to $17,083 per month for 3 years. My $52,000 salary helped cover part of that. I lived at home. I didn't ask questions about where my paycheck was going. I just worked, came home, and tried not to think about PenMed. But other people were thinking about it. In March 2019, at a neighbor's garden party, I overheard my mother telling Mrs. Ashford, Claire needed a break. Medical school is very demanding. Needed a break? That wasn't what she had told me. She had spoken of a temporary emergency and strategic resource management. By May, the story had changed again. If medical school wasn't the right fit for Claire, I heard her say at the club. I confronted her that night. I telling people it wasn't the right fit. It's because it's easier than explaining the whole situation. She replied calmly. Cindy replied calmly, people don't need to know our private business, but it makes it sound like I couldn't handle it. Claire, you're being sensitive. I'm protecting our privacy. That word, sensitive, landed differently now, like an accusation. In July, Sophie, my anatomy lab partner from Penn, called. Hey, she said carefully. Ran into your mom at a healthcare conference. She mentioned you'd had some burnout issues. My blood ran cold. Burnout. That's what she was saying. That medical school had been overwhelming and I needed time to recover. Are you okay? I wasn't okay. But I didn't know how to explain that the story my mother was telling wasn't the one I had lived. I'm fine, I told Sophie. Just family stuff. I'll be back soon. But I wouldn't be back. And somewhere deep down, I was beginning to realize it. My father's settlement was finalized in September, resignation plus full restitution. The company agreed not to pursue criminal charges in exchange for cooperation and repayment. It was handled quietly, internally, professionally. No public record, no scandal, just our family paying in silence. By fall 2019, even I started to wonder, maybe I really wasn't strong enough. Maybe they were right. Maybe I had been struggling at Penn without realizing it. And my mother, the trained administrator and expert problem solver, had seen what I couldn't. When you hear the same lie enough times, it begins to sound like truth. In November 2019, my mother introduced me to Grant Hollowell. He's an investment advisor at UBS, she said, as if reading from a resume. A 33 from a very good family. I think you two would get along. We met at a hospital fundraiser. Grant was handsome in that clean-cut mainline way, pressed khakis, blue blazer, firm handshake. He seemed kind and stable, the kind of person who had his life together. We started dating in December. Every Sunday we had dinner with my parents. My mother would ask Grant about our plans, where we were going, what we were doing, how things were progressing. It felt less like casual interest and more like supervision. Grant proposed in May 2020, simple ring, romantic setting, all the expected beats. When he asked, I said yes because it felt like the logical next step, because I was 25, directionless, and he seemed like a good person, because my mother cried when we told her. And this time I knew exactly what those tears meant. Relief. We got married on June 13th, 2020. Small wedding, 38 guests. We used pandemic restrictions as the excuse, but honestly, I didn't have many friends left to invite. Most of my college friends had drifted away. My Penn Med friends had moved on. I had become someone whose life had quietly narrowed to work, home, and the slow erosion of whoever I used to be. There was no honeymoon. Always should be financially prudent, Grant said. I thought he was being responsible. I didn't realize he thought I needed to be managed. Lisa, the red flags started small. Grant would casually reference things my mother had told him. Your mom mentioned you get anxious about big decisions. Or, your mother said you've been through a lot. I want to make sure you're not taking on too much. anxious about big decisions. Just about big decisions. These weren't things I had ever said about myself. They were my mother's words filtered through Grant's concern. In October 2020, I mentioned wanting to apply to MPH programs part-time while working my way back into healthcare, even if it wasn't medical school. Grant hesitated. And maybe wait a year. Let things settle. Things are settled, I said. Your mother thinks you might be pushing yourself too hard again. Again. That word hung heavy in the air. What do you mean, again? He blinked. You know, like before at Penn. Now what exactly did she tell you about Penn? That you had some challenges. That medical school was really hard on you. 18 months into our marriage, during an argument about my career, he said something that stopped me cold. Your mother warned me you'd try to do too much again. She said, you don't always recognize your limits. I stared at him. What exactly did my mother tell you about me? The conversation that followed marked the beginning of the end. Grant didn't want to talk about it at first. He kept saying he didn't want to violate my mother's confidence, which was absurd. She had been talking about me, not to me. Finally, he admitted it. She said you had a breakdown at Penn, that you couldn't handle the stress of medical school, that you needed someone stable in your life to help keep you grounded. The kitchen of our Bryn Mawr apartment felt very quiet. A breakdown than langala. That's what she had told him. That I was under too much pressure and it became too much, so I had to withdraw. She had asked him to be patient with me, to understand that I might need extra support. I called my mother that night, September 18th, 2021. The call lasted 43 minutes. Did you tell Grant I had a breakdown? A Claire, overreacting. Did you? A pause. I told him you went through a difficult time, which is true. You told him I couldn't handle medical school. You told him I was unstable. I never used that word, but that's what you meant. That's what you wanted him to believe. I was protecting you, she said, her voice hardening. You were fragile, Claire. You needed someone stable. I did what any mother would do. You lied about me to my husband before I even married him. Both see if him can text so he could support you properly. He doesn't support me, Mom. He manages me like I'm some kind of project that needs handling. Because you don't always see what's best for you, she said. You never have for a Jella. Medical school was too much. I knew it. I pulled you out before you completely fell apart. And I made sure Grant understood what he was getting into so he wouldn't be blindsided when I hung up. That's when I knew. She believed her own lie. She had rewritten history so thoroughly in her mind that she could no longer see the difference between what actually happened and what she had decided happened. And if she had lied to Grant about me, what else had she lied about? I moved out in October 2021. My college friend Emily had an apartment in Ardmore and let me stay in her spare room. I filed for separation on October 28th. Grant didn't fight it. I think part of him was relieved. I don't blame you for believing her, I told him when I left. Buzz. You didn't blame her for making you believe it. The divorce took 6 months to finalize. Pennsylvania is a no-fault state, and we had no kids or significant assets to divide. It was over by April 2022. If you're still here, that means this story is hitting close to home. Woo. Do me a favor, smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happened next. Drop your location and local time below. I want to know who's listening at 2 a.m. with me tonight. But the unraveling of everything I thought I knew was only just beginning. In June 2022, I was sorting through divorce paperwork Grant's lawyer had sent. Tax documents mostly, joint filings that needed to be separated. Schedule A, itemized deductions, and there it was on line 43. Education fund withdrawal penalty, $127,000. Date, February 14th, 2019. I had known about the withdrawal. What I hadn't known was the destination. The notation in the margin read, Clatterbuck Family Trust, legal expenses. Not medical emergency, not family health crisis. Legal expenses, legal expenses. I sat on Emily's couch and stared at that line for 20 minutes. Then I called Penn, Student Affairs. This is Karen speaking. Hi, my name is Claire Clatterbuck. I was a student at the Perelman School of Medicine. I took a medical leave in January 2019, and I need to request my complete file. All correspondence related to my withdrawal. There was a pause. May I ask why you're requesting this? I'm reviewing my academic records for personal reasons. All right, I'll submit the request. It usually takes about 2 weeks. It took 13 days. The email arrived on July 28, 2022. Subject, Records Request C. Clatterbuck. Attached, 11 documents. I opened them in my car, parked outside the biotech company where I still worked. I couldn't wait until I got home. The voluntary medical leave form was first. I recognized my signature and the reason I had written family health emergency requiring caregiver presence. But underneath, in the official processing notes, someone had added, a student requesting mental health support during leave, period. So, I never requested mental health support. I never wrote those words. I scrolled to the next document. Email correspondence from my mother to Associate Dean Patterson. Sent January 12, 2019, 3 days before she made me sign the form. Subject, confidential Claire Clatterbuck medical leave request. I read it twice, then a third time. Dear Associate Dean Patterson, I am writing regarding my daughter Claire Clatterbuck, currently in her 2nd year. Claire has been experiencing significant anxiety and stress adaptation issues related to the academic demands of medical school. Our family is seeking appropriate mental health support for her during this time. We respectfully request accommodation for voluntary medical leave effective immediately. We appreciate your discretion in this sensitive matter. Sincerely, Diane Clatterbuck. Anxiety and stress adaptation issues, mental health support. Our family is seeking, not Claire is seeking. Our family. She had made it sound like I was falling apart, like I was the one who couldn't cope. And she had done it in writing to the institution, creating an official record of my alleged instability. 3 days later, she had sat me down and told me we had a temporary financial emergency. She had asked me to sign a form, and I trusted her. I sat in that parking lot and felt something crack open in my chest. Not sadness, not even anger, just cold, clear realization. They didn't just take my money. They took my story and rewrote it with my name on documents I never saw. If you've ever had someone in your family create an official record about you that wasn't true or rewrite your struggles to protect themselves, hit that like button right now and tell me in the comments, has anyone ever told a version of your life that made you start doubting yourself? I read every single comment. Over the next few weeks, I pieced together the rest. My father's embezzlement, $865,000 taken over 2 years through fake vendor invoices, inflated consulting contracts, and duplicate payment chains. The internal audit had begun in December 2018, administrative leave in January 2019, settlement finalized September 2019, education fund withdrawal, $127,000 on February 14, 2019, used for legal fees and the initial restitution payment. My salary the first year, $52,000. All of it funneled into household expenses while my parents made their monthly restitution payments. In total, I unknowingly contributed $179,000 toward covering my father's crime. But the money wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was that my mother had looked an associate dean in the eye, on paper, in writing, with institutional authority, and told her I was mentally unstable, that I was experiencing anxiety and stress adaptation issues, that I needed mental health support. She had created a record, an official story, one that followed me even after I left. Sophie had heard it. Grant had heard it. How many others had my mother quietly told that I'd burned out, that I couldn't handle the pressure, that I was sensitive, fragile, and needed support? She had turned my sacrifice into my failure, my trust into my weakness. And she had done it so carefully, so politely, that even I had started to believe it. I wasn't going back to medical school. I was 30 years old by 2022. An M2 dropout from 2019 couldn't simply slide back into clinical rotations. But I wasn't done with healthcare. In March 2023, I was promoted to Senior Clinical Research Manager at the oncology biotech company where I'd been working, $96,000 a year, leading a team and managing patient access programs. It wasn't the MD path, but it was mine, built on my terms, not theirs. I cut contact with my parents down to about 20%. Holiday cards, brief phone calls when absolutely necessary, no more Sunday dinners, no more performances. In August 2024, I attended a healthcare compliance conference at the Philadelphia Convention Center. There was a panel on medical education ethics and legal boundaries. I went mostly out of curiosity. The second speaker was Evan Whitaker, 34, a healthcare compliance attorney at a mid-sized firm in Center City. He specialized in institutional fraud involving medical schools, hospitals, and research facilities. He spoke about cases where families misrepresented students' tuitions, where pressure and manipulation created false records, where vulnerable people became trapped in narratives they didn't write. I listened to him and thought he would understand, and thought he would understand. After the panel, I introduced myself. We talked for 20 minutes about compliance frameworks and medical education policy. He was smart, precise, and careful with language. He asked good questions. At the end, he handed me his card. If you ever need someone to talk to about institutional issues, he said, I'm around. I called him 2 days later. Our first date was in September, dinner at Vernick Fish. I told him I had left medical school. He asked why, and for the first time in 5 years, I told someone the truth. Not the version my mother had crafted, the actual truth. He didn't say, I'm sorry that happened. He said, what your mother did, misrepresenting your mental state to an institution, that could be fraud, especially if it was used to manipulate you into withdrawing. By our fourth date in October, I had shown him everything. The email from my mother to Penn, the education fund withdrawal records, the settlement documents I had managed to find. He read through it all in his apartment, yellow legal pad in hand, making notes like he was preparing for trial. Do you want to do something about this? He asked. I thought about it. I want people to know the truth. I want her to stop being able to tell that story about me. He looked up. Then we'll make sure she can't. He proposed in July 2025 at Morris Arboretum, early morning before the crowds arrived. Simple ring, $4,200. My choice. Practical. When he asked, I said yes because he saw me. Not the version my parents had invented. Not the girl who couldn't handle pressure. Me. I love the real you, he said. Not the version anyone tried to write. I didn't know how much I needed to hear that. When my mother insisted on hosting our engagement party, Evan looked at me. Your call. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to keep her away entirely, but another part, the part that had spent 6 years being misrepresented, wanted one last chance for truth. Let's do it, I said, but on our terms. I said, but on our terms. The party was scheduled for October 19th at the Rittenhouse Hotel. My mother contributed $8,500, which meant she got to control the planning. 80 to 100 guests, she had said. Past hors d'oeuvres, string quartet, toasts at 7:30. What she didn't know was that Evan had contacted the venue 2 weeks earlier. We'd like to set up a photo slideshow during the toasts, he told the event coordinator. Candid pictures from our relationship, something sweet for the guests. The coordinator loved the idea. He's with the idea. Photo slideshows were standard at engagement parties. Romantic, touching, expected. The hotel set up a 120-inch screen and projector system. My mother approved it enthusiastically. She probably imagined watching us on vacation, laughing over dinner, all the pretty moments she could display. Even tested the connection twice. The tablet synced seamlessly. No photos would appear, just documents. 3 weeks before the party, Evan met with Grant. They had coffee at Bluestone Lane in Wayne. Even laid out everything my parents had done. The embezzlement, the education fund, the email to Penn creating a false record of my mental instability. Grant's hands shook as he read my mother's email to Associate Dean Patterson. I married a version of you she invented, he said quietly. We owe you the truth. Evan asked if he would be willing to testify if needed. Grant agreed. He would be at the party not as a regular guest, but as Evan's witness. Table 7 toward the back. My mother wouldn't know until the moment he stood up. October 19th arrived. The details were redacted. Evan had made sure to protect what needed protecting. But one line was clear: restitution, $865,000 over 36 months in resolution of financial misconduct. Not severance. Restitution. Financial misconduct. My father's face went crimson. This is a private matter, my mother hissed. Is it? Evan's voice remained calm and precise. Because your wife just publicly called your daughter a medical school dropout who couldn't handle pressure. She made it sound like Claire failed. So let me be clear about what actually happened. Stu, let me be clear about what actually happened. He turned to face the crowd. Claire didn't drop out. She was pulled out. In January 2019, Mr. Clatterbuck was under investigation for embezzling $865,000 from his employer. His wife, he gestured to my mother, told Claire there was a family financial emergency. She asked Claire to take medical leave and start working to help support the family. And then she sent this email to Penn, creating an official record that Claire was mentally unstable. My mother tried to interrupt. I was protecting. You were protecting your husband. You were protecting your husband. Evan said, and yourselves. Claire's education fund paid for legal fees. Her salary helped cover restitution payments. And you rewrote her story so thoroughly that even she started to believe it. He paused. I'm not finished. The room held its breath. Mrs. Clatterbuck also told Claire's first husband, before they married, that Claire had a breakdown at medical school. That she was fragile, that she needed someone stable to manage her. I heard movement. Grant Hollowell stood up from table 7. My mother's head whipped around. What is he doing here? Grant's voice was quiet but clear. She told me the same thing, Claire, that you'd had a breakdown, that you couldn't handle medical school stress, that I needed to be patient with you because you didn't recognize your own limits. He looked at my mother. Ian looked at my mother. I believed you. I'm sorry, Claire. I should have questioned it. The room was spinning now. Conversations, whispers, people looking from my mother to my father to me to the screen. I stood up. My voice when I spoke was steady. I was in the top 25% of my class. Mother, Moan GPA 3.76. I wasn't struggling. I wasn't failing. You pulled me out to pay for Dad's mistakes. You took my education fund. You told Penn I was mentally unstable. You told my husband I'd had a breakdown. And then you spent 6 years telling everyone I was too weak to finish medical school. I looked around the room at the 86 people who had just heard everything. You didn't fail, I said. You did. The room was silent except for my mother's heels clicking on marble as she walked out. My father followed. 63 guests left with them or shortly after. Some were uncomfortable. Shui, Orga. Some followed out of loyalty or awkwardness. Some simply didn't know what to do. 23 stayed. That moment when the truth finally came out in front of everyone, if this gave you even a little bit of justice for your own story, hit like right now and comment below. What would you have done if your family publicly rewrote your life like this? I read every comment and replied to as many as I can. Emily was the first to approach me. Your mom told everyone you had a nervous breakdown years ago at Penn. I believed her. Claire, I'm so sorry. 12 people said some version of that. I never knew. I'm sorry I believed it. I should have asked you directly. Aunt Patricia called the next morning. I always thought something was off about your mother's story, she said. Diane is very good at controlling narratives. Too good. Over the next 2 days, I received 14 text messages from extended family members asking for the full story. I sent them the same response. What Evan showed at the party is the truth. That's all I have to say. My father sent an email on October 21st. Subject, disappointed. Body, we did what we thought was best for the family in a difficult time. Your public humiliation of us was unnecessary and cruel. You're being dramatic. I deleted it without responding. My mother sent nothing. Some people asked if I felt guilty for humiliating my parents publicly. I didn't. They had humiliated me privately for 6 years. They had told friends, extended family, my husband and my medical school that I was unstable, fragile, unable to cope. They had built an entire narrative around my failure, a failure that never happened. I just gave them a taste of sunlight. Evan and I decided to elope. Small ceremony, February 14th, 2026. 8 people, Emily, Sophie, my old anatomy lab partner, Evan's parents and sister, Aunt Patricia, and 2 of Evan's close friends. Not my parents, not my father's business associates, not the people from the club, just the ones who saw us clearly. On December 1st, 2025, I was promoted again, Director of Patient Access Programs at the biotech company $118,000 a year, managing a team of 6, and building advocacy programs for underserved patients, people who got left behind by systems that were supposed to help them. I didn't get my MD, but I got here on my own terms. In January 2026, I enrolled in an MPH program at Drexel University, part-time public health policy and management. This time, no one could pull me out. Grant sent me an email in early November, 3 paragraphs, genuine. They should have questioned what they told me. I should have asked you directly. I'm sorry I married a version of you they invented instead of finding out who you really were. I wrote back, thank you. Some apologies don't fix things, but they acknowledge the break was real. I started therapy in November 2025, not because I was unstable, but because I was finally stable enough to process what had been done. My therapist asked me once, when did you start believing your mother's version of you? The day I signed that form? I said, what to do? I don't have much contact with my parents now. Holiday cards. That's it. I tried calling my mother once after the party on October 23rd. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. I need space, I told her. You humiliated us, she said. She still thought she was the victim. She was the victim. I haven't spoken to her since. My father tried a few more emails. Family is family. We should talk. This has gone on long enough. I stopped responding. Some people don't want reconciliation. They want compliance. On February 14th, 2026, Evan and I got married at Morris Arboretum. 8 guests, outdoor ceremony, simple vows. When it was Evan's turn, he looked at me and said, I promise to always see the real you, not the version anyone else wrote, not the story they tried to tell about you, just you. For the first time in 6 years, I believe someone actually did. Here's what I want you to understand. Some families don't destroy you with screaming. They do it with paperwork, polite lies, stories they tell in your name to people who matter. Deans, husbands, friends, communities. They rewrite your history so carefully, so officially that even you start to believe it. The truth doesn't always come quickly. It took me 3 years from the moment I saw that tax document to the night I stood in front of 86 people and reclaimed my story. But when truth comes, it does something important. It gives your wounds back their real names. I wasn't weak. I was betrayed. I wasn't fragile. I was lied about. I didn't fail. I was sabotaged. Those are different things, and the difference matters. I didn't get my MD, but I got something better. And I got my life back and the right to tell my own story. If you're listening to this and you've ever had someone rewrite your life, someone who told people you were something you weren't, who created records that painted you as less than you were, who used their authority to make their version of you more believable than the truth, I want you to know you're not crazy. You know what happened to you. And someday, when you're ready, you'll tell it. That's my story, the real one, the one I'm writing now. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you. Seriously, if you've ever had your story taken from you and rewritten by the people who were supposed to protect you, you're not crazy. You're not fragile. And you're not alone. Zafrud, drop your 2 words in the comments. What did your family say when they tried to control your narrative? If this story helped you feel seen, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There are so many more real stories like this waiting in the description. I'll see you in the next one.